Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Matthew.
Episode 363, recorded for July 14th, 2026. 20 years of waiting in line. Good evening, Ryan and Matt. How you guys doing?
doing good.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm awake and I'm here, so I call that a win.
Yeah. I got home from Tennessee very late last night to bring the humidity apparently from Tennessee with me to my house where it was 100 degrees and humid. So it's been kind of miserable today here at the homestead, but hopefully it cools off very quickly because I don't know if I can do that much humidity that long. Yeah.
And I walked out of the house right before we record to take the dog for a walk, and it's currently 92 degrees at 9 p.m. I think that's great. It's going to be a good night here.
Humidity really holds it in. Like I'm, just fresh back from kind of the Midwest. They don't like being called Midwest, but it's in Ohio. And the humidity just really seems to hold the heat. So like there's no cooling off like you get sort of in California, at least. It's gross. I don't know how people
Born and
sleep.
raised in Florida, it's 100% humidity or nothing.
Ugh.
Yeah. That's why I don't like spending a lot of time in Florida. It's miserable.
No. If you're not walking outside and sweating, you're not doing it right.
Yes. All right. Well, we've got a bunch of cloud news as always here. So first up, former GitHub CEO Thomas Dumke has launched Entire, a startup building a distributed Git network aimed at reducing load on centralized hosting caused by AI coding agents. Companies apparently raised $60 million seed round at a $300 million valuation. I mean, for not having a product, that's pretty darn impressive. Basically, if you've heard of all GitHub's woes, and we talked about it here on the show, they're saying that basically the exponential growth of code is part of the reason why GitHub has not been stable. I think it's a convenient excuse, just like it's a convenient excuse for layoffs. But, that's where we're at. Apparently, the core idea of this, though, is mirroring GitHub repos across regions, US, Europe, Australia, so agents can pull from nearby mirrors instead of hitting a single central repo, which addresses a rate limiting and latency issue that comes with high volume automated cloning and pushing. Reported internal benchmarks include about 570,000 clones per hour on a single repo and 586 pushes per second. Though these are self-reported and not yet independently verified, Entire says it plans to open source the Git backend and benchmarking tools for third-party validations. Beyond distribution, Entire is building a semantic layer on top of Git history, capturing agent prompts, reasoning, and tool calls, with features like Entire blame tracing, AI-generated code back to original prompts, and Entire review support multi-agent code reviews. This treats AI agent traffic as a distinct infrastructure problem separate from human developer workflows. So, it's Git for AI. That's basically how you could read it.
Kinda. Or it's memcache for Git, it's kind of just that, right? Like
geo-replicated Redis for, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like the numbers sort of bear out some of the complaints that GitHub had in terms of like the load, like because you think AI writes some bloated code, and then all the agents are working at a much faster pace than humans. But I do think it's also just kind of shortcoming in capacity forecasting for Git, right? Sounds like the former CEO has a technology solve, which it's pretty smart. Get fired for having all these issues and then solve the problem anyway. Okay,
and then get bought by them probably is your plan, right?
Most likely.
Come back in as the shining hero.
I do like the idea of splitting out the AI workflow, and it's really interesting to kind of see will be interesting to see how they actually like track it all the way back. So essentially like the Git blame for your prompt to educate people, because I'll have a conversation, build something, kind of go from there, but then I never know it went south, and I'm like, okay, what prompt did I make, or what did I do, or what thing in the plan did I miss that made it go south when I wanted it to go north? So if you could track that back, it would be an interesting way to self-improve upon your prompting.
So I don't think this will separate out the traffic in any way to give that visibility. It really is just because you define the mirrors as targets. It sounds like.
How does it? The idea that it could do a blame back to the prompt, the originating prompt is interesting. Like how exactly is not in a GitHub repo today that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of either, unless if they're going to require you to use originally when GitHub released their CLI,
some proprietary,
something like that, in order to leverage it.
Interesting. I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll see if $300 million valuation already. So they gotta do something.
Yeah, it's amazing considering how nothing this is. Like it's just an announcement of an intent to do a thing. Like,
I would definitely invest in the former founder of GitHub. He, He has probably good ideas, and I imagine that you're funding the team more than you're funding the idea at this point.
Every time we talk about something like this with these massive evaluations, I always think of AI.com, and every time I go there, still in beta.
Yeah, I don't know if anything's ever going to happen to AI.com.
That is really
I don't think
funny.
it's either.
They just spent a bunch of money on a
check.
football ad, and it's just nothing. Wow.
Yeah, I'm surprised like Wired magazine or The Verge or somebody hasn't tracked down what the hell happened with that whole thing, because like someone out there spent a lot of money on that ad, and
Yeah,
it's just
where's
crazy.
my Fire Festival documentary on that? Yeah.
Right? That's what I want to know. Well, Satya Nadella wrote a Twitter post over the week. I don't know why he decided to write these all on Twitter now. Like, it's the least popular place I want to go read your blog thoughts. It's on Twitter, but
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. But basically, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella coined the reverse information paradox, which he says is AI flipping Kenneth Arrow's classic info paradox. Instead of sellers giving away value before being paid, buyers now have to feed proprietary knowledge into a model just to make it useful, paying twice, once in dollars and once in your intellectual property. Nadella says every prompt correction and eval is exhaust that trains the model's provider future's intelligence, a one-way flow where the vendor learns about your business and you learn nothing about their model. Without a fix, economic value drifts to whoever owns the learning infrastructure, the model provider, not the companies actually generating the knowledge. He quotes Palantir's Alex Karp on customers wanting to own their compute models, data, and alpha, not quietly hand it over. Nadella says enterprises need a hard trust boundary, a line across which nothing, not even usage exhaust, crosses without consent, so data, traces, evals, and tuned weights stay owned by the firm. His 5C framework for this is control your own evals, traces, feedbacks, built-in tenant capability to tune models, keep choice by decoupling orchestration from any single model, use decoupling to manage cost, and compound it into a continuous learning loop. Using a model shouldn't require giving up the knowledge that makes your company unique, which I think is fine. I get what he's saying, but you are selling one of the largest LLM models that's literally sucking up all this knowledge and doing exactly what you just complained about. So what's your solution, Satya? That's what I want to know.
And if he hates this, I really hate to see his reaction when he finds out about advertising tracking cookies.
Touche.
I mean, isn't the premise of, running it all inside of Azure or AWS that they're not training on your data?
I mean, I think that's the assumption, but like that's the data you're actually feeding into the prompts, right? Like my data is not going to be used to train your models is the claim, right? And that's the contract that we have in place. If you're an enterprise who's buying Claude or you're buying, Azure, OpenAI, whatever. But that being said, even without having the prompt data, there's a ton of data that's considered theirs intellectually around how it thought about your data. It doesn't have the data, but it knows how it thought about your data. So I assume that you could probably infer some of the data model without even having the data to train your model, because you have all this output and thinking logic around it. And I think that's what he's trying to point out, is that that's the risk. And no one really has a solution for that unless you're using your own GPUs and you're running your own models on those GPUs, which is what maybe he's trying to say Azure can do for you. But again, it wasn't clear because he didn't call out how Azure solves this for you, which is what I would hope someone would say. But
yeah, and I don't quite know if what he's saying is more valuable than any kind of tracking of user behavior and accessing an application or a site. I don't quite it is an interesting look. There's data that's not your data, and that's probably not very clearly defined, and it's very easy for a company like Anthropic or OpenAI to be like, well, that's not your data. That's this data of usage. And so therefore I can use that. And you can probably get a lot of data out of those prompts and the responses, probably just the prompts. And then use that, which I think is where he's getting at. But I'm not sure that the value is there for me to be concerned. Other than the normal privacy. I don't use AI as a therapist. I don't use it, to crunch my numbers for finance, kind of thing. So because of privacy concerns, I don't know.
Yeah, there are definitely risks. I also, in many lawsuits, apparently the AI would tell you to go kill yourself. So be careful using it for therapy.
Yeah, do not. Yeah.
Don't pass go on that. Well, yeah. So I'm curious, this is him starting a series of blogs that then leads to some announcement or something that solves this problem, or if he's just,
pointing it out,
speaking into the world.
It's weird, yeah, because I'm like, does he see something I don't see? Like it kind of feels like that, because like he's been smart. He's definitely done wonders to Windows and Microsoft in general. So
yeah, I mean, he's exodus from the Ballmer era quite successfully. Like people respect Microsoft somewhat now, maybe not as much as they'd like to be respected, but still better than they were during the Ballmer era. And
for sure.
Yeah, they're not trying to make a phone anymore, which is great.
Yeah.
Apparently they're not trying to make a new version of Linux. I don't know about that part, but here we are. So all right, let's move on to AI as how machine learning makes money. And for this week, if you're curious about some of these models, there's a great blog post that we're talking about here from Try AI. They did a build-off test of Grok 4.5, GPT 5.5, and Cloud Opus 4.8 and Cloud Table 5 on identical one-shot prompts to build a 3D Rubik's Cube, a particle gravity sandbox, a breakout game, a self-contained HTML files, and then measure the latency and cost through a unified testing harness. And some of their findings were quite interesting. So Grok 4.5 differentiated on performance metrics, sub half second time to first token, roughly 110 tokens a second throughput, about double that of the other models, and the lowest cost per reply, though it required one retry to render the Rubik's Cube correctly on the hardest task. Cloud Opus 4.8 and Table 5 were the only models to successfully render the 3D Rubik's Cube with the correct colors and animated solving on the first attempt, positioning them as a more reliable choice for complex, stateful coding tasks and costs of higher latency and price. And GPT 5.5 produced the most visually appealing particle gravity sandbox and had the fastest response times on short answers, but failed to render a complete Rubik's Cube. Yeah, it's pretty sad, the Rubik's Cube, if you look at it. All of our models successfully built a playable breakout game on the first try with score tracking and lives, indicating that for moderate, complex, well-established app patterns, model choice may matter less than for novel or highly stateful tasks like 3D cubes. It's just interesting the comparison and what they did. And I remember when Breakout was a big game back in the 90s, and it was like hugely popular. Now you can rebuild it with AI, apparently.
Yeah, well, I mean, I really like the comparison of this because this is one of those things I think that when you're using multiple models, in your development or playing around, like you always have this thought, like, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they, give them the same problem and see what the differences are. And so it's nice to see that someone actually did it versus just what I've done, which is twiddle my thumbs after I've said that. And it's neat to see the differences, right? Because it sort of backs up what I feel anyway, which is that like Grok is cheap and fast, and Cloud Opus and Fable are the better models for complex tasks. I am sort of surprised that the best looking particle gravity box was GPT 5.5, but that's probably not fair to them.
I mean, I was kind of sad they didn't include Gemini in here, but then having tried to use Gemini to do these things, I could see the results probably weren't been great. But it's interesting, GPT 5.5. But both Gemini and OpenAI have a very science background, right, where they use a lot of science data, and so I'm not surprised that their visual representation is better. I bet Gemini would also have a really nice particle gravity sandbox just based on where they came from. Claude didn't have the best ones there. Fable 5, I don't even understand. I'm like, it's not even the same.
I don't even know what it's doing from looking at the picture.
Yeah, but I mean, it's starting out well, but then it goes really bad. So, but it's just sort of interesting. I do sort of wonder if the pedigree of where your model came from and how much science backing it was doing early on in its model development now has some ramifications for some things, like when you want to do like a visualization of a science concept. Because I mean, you think about like AlphaFold, for example, on all the data they have on how to fold proteins, like that's got to all be visually good, which is why I think GPT 5.5 maybe did a good job at it.
I mean, it'll be interesting long term if they keep up the same standardized test, how it improves over the years. Because I remember like video cards back in the day, it was like, okay, what's your frame rate per second on this game versus this game? And you used to see every time a new video card or anything was released, they would like run that spec on it. For all I know, they still do it. I just am not in that world anymore. And now if you could build a standard test framework for it, and everyone jokes about, hey, do I take my car to the car wash? It's 50 meters away. Should I drive or walk? Build a standardized testing that hopefully nobody builds the model to beat the test for the sake of it. But you can do that and get a better score over time. It'd be interesting to see how much they actually are improving.
Have you never seen benchmark manipulation? I guess you 100% guarantee that models very soon are going to be detecting that thing about, do I drive my car or do I walk? That's such a silly, right. I need to get gas. Like, do I drive my car or do I walk? It's like, well, you have to take your car. That's the answer. And human understands it, but the AI doesn't always understand that But I guarantee that that'll get solved probably. But then someone else will come up with something similar. Yeah.
Right. But if you build something like this over time, you can start to see the trends of these a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, Anthropic is apparently redesigning the Cloud Code desktop app to support running multiple agentic coding sessions in parallel with a new sidebar for managing active and recent sessions across repos, filterable by status, project, or environment. The update adds an integrated terminal, file editor, and diff viewer directly in the app with a drag and drop pane layout so developers can review and ship Claude's work without switching to a separate editor. A new side chat feature, command control plus semicolon, lets users branch out questions when tasked without polluting the main session thread, useful for steering or clarifying without derailing the primary agent run. SSH support now extends to Mac in addition to Linux, allowing sessions to run locally or against remote machines from either platform. And the app has plugin parity with CLI for centrally managed or locally installed plugins. 3 view modes, verbose, normal, and summary, let users control how much detail they see from Claude's tool calls. And the app now streams responses in real time with a usage indicator showing context window and session consumption, available now for Pro, Max, Team, Enterprise, and API users.
If I thought the client was bloated now with all the chat and co-work, and it does have code in there too, it's just weird and hard to use.
I've actually started using the code for like small snippets of things that I want to just like something really simple. Like I was adding to Bolt the like adjusting. I set it up just to push notifications, and versus me going into my CLI because I was doing something else. I just flipped over to code, told it to do this fairly simplistic add-on that I wanted to do, and that's where I kind of use it is for simple things. And then if I need, hey, I'm adding a whole push notification feature, that's when I kind of go to the main one. So yes, it's bloated, but I kind of am finding it useful in a weird way.
As someone who adopted sort of GitHub Copilot in VS Code and then used Cursor, how did you do the Cloud Code with the like multiple agents and complex workflows before, like using the CLI? Could you not? Like, I don't really understand how you would do like sort of chaining multiple agents together in a development workflow.
In the Claude
Directly
CLI?
in the CLI, yeah.
I feel like I did it. Now I'm questioning myself because I would normally give it like this, like.
So you can have sub agents that basically kick off underneath a master agent session. So in CLI,
that's what I was doing.
Yeah. So in the CLI, you're basically you have your Opus or your Fable command tier, and you basically do all the planning and all the work with that. You interact with Fable or Opus, and then it basically spins off subtasks either in Haiku or in Sonnet that are carved down, and that actually does the execution work. So that's typically how you do it in that. And you originally you had to enable the agent feature. I don't think you still have to.
I think it's by default there.
I think it's now finally by default, but there for a while you had to turn it on. But now basically if you're using like their superpowers plugin pack, it basically defaults this model now, where it will automatically try to use sub agents to do things. And then the interesting thing is, like, one of the things I'm actually kind of nice about the new code interface is it finally starts showing, because one of the things they're doing is they're building an agent runtime environment with Anthropic where you could basically have your agentic workloads run. Of course, makes sense. But it was difficult to see them before this new update to the code, because now I can actually go see the ones I've created and what their status was and what they did last. So that's kind of nice, which is difficult to do from the CLI. So there are some benefits to it. I hope they don't replace the CLI. I used to use the Claude in my IDE, and now I don't ever use that. So I like to live inside my terminal. Effectively.
Now you're just in your terminal. It's funny. I've gone the other way. Now I'm opening browser windows in my IDE. But yeah, but I get it. Like, it's the same. It's one of those things where I think I needed the visual representation of the AI coding. Like, I've never used it for like AI code. Like population or fill-in. I've always used it for like, hey, go fix this one thing, and then watching that. Like, I kind of needed it to understand the AI usage. So I can see how, I like that they're adding this. I kind of wish it was its own thing, but instead of the Anthropic Claude app, which is, I kind of already, like, I got myself confused between co-work and chat already. I'm like, oh,
well, they merged them together.
You don't know how to do anything over here.
They merged them, which was kind of unfortunate because, like,
kind of
merged it. Yeah. It's in one tab, but then like you in the chat box where you actually do chat, you just tab it over to co-work.
Yeah. And they both have projects, which is where I messed up.
Yeah,
which
is
confusing.
But then you hit all the hard limits, like, you can only do 10 files attached to a chat. Where co-work, you don't put the file in necessarily, you just attach it to the directory with the files, and those are going to be sharp edges for people as they go through that process.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to AWS. We're still in the Anthropic family, so it's a good segue. AWS and Anthropic are launching Cloud Apps Gateway, a self-hosted control plane for managing cloud code and cloud desktop deployments across development teams, addressing the operational overhead of provisioning individual credentials and manually tracking spend per developer. The gateway centralizes 5 functions: identity via OIDC or SSO integration, policy enforcement for like which models you can use or tool permissions, telemetry via OTLP to CloudWatch or Prometheus, request routing to Bedrock or Cloud Platform on AWS, and configurable spend caps at the org, group, or user level. Deployment runs as a stateless container on ECS, EKS, or EC2, backed by RDS for PostgreSQL for session state. With no long-lived secrets on developer machines, sessions expire automatically when a user is removed from the identity provider, typically within 1 hour. Organizations choose between 2 routing options. Amazon Bedrock keeps data with the AWS security boundary using existing IAM roles, while Cloud Platform on AWS offers Anthropic's native platform experience with AWS authentication and billing, giving flexibility depending on your data residency need. This addresses a real governance gap for enterprise scaling AI coding assistance, spend caps, and centralized policy control, lets admins restrict models, tool permissions, and file network access, pushing configuration changes to each developer's machine individually.
Hey, Anthropic, maybe this should just be in your product? I never thought of that. Like, why do we got to have an AWS Bedrock gateway for this? Like, I mean, I like it. I want all these things. Just, it's strange to me that I have to, put my entire organization into AWS and the development into there.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also weird, the whole idea that like there's things that you can configure in the organizational settings, and then there's things that you can't. And like, why can't we just configure everything in the organizational settings? And then, like now you have this additional layer of complexity of like, well, and I'm sure on their side, they're like, well, everyone already has their AWS infrastructure configured and single sign-on identity, right? And so then that'll make things easier. And it's like, no, not really for AWS. For Google, I can maybe make that argument because if you're a Google App Shop, you probably are hooked up that way. Or if you're Azure, you might be able to do that as well with Entra IDs. But Amazon's a little rougher. So it's a little strange.
Yeah, their identity story is not as strong for sure.
Yep.
Well, it's just not one of the main ones. I feel like Microsoft and Google own that world so much. When your email is one of those 2 platforms, if you're, I don't want to say any size business because, the consultant in me tells me to never say always, but like, I don't know any business that isn't, any decent sized business that's not using one of those 2 providers as their identity provider.
Well, I mean, Okta, Auth0, like there's a bunch of identity providers.
But normally that still links back to one of those or...
Oh yeah, I mean you federate your IDP into the application so that they have access to your Office 365 or Google Workspace. Yeah,
but if you're a newer company, you could use AWS Identity, I suppose. Like I didn't do it, but I could have. I used Google because that makes more sense. But
so I read this the other way, which is that the gateway is authenticating outbound, right? So it's not necessarily integrating with Amazon directly. I mean, I guess it could, but yeah. I think that's what the gateway is providing, a sort of a centralized place where you can configure those integrations.
Yeah, that makes some sense. AWS Builder Center now offers you free, time-limited sandbox environments for eligible workshops, removing the barrier of needing a personal AWS account or credit card to experiment with AWS services. Each sandbox provides 8 hours of pre-provisioned access with automatic resource cleanup afterward, and builders can request 1 sandbox per week, with a limit resetting every Sunday. Provision takes roughly 15 minutes, making it practical for quick hands-on learning sessions or workshop completion without upfront setup time. Lowering the entry barrier for AWS skill building and particularly useful for students, bootcamp participants, or anyone hesitant to link a credit card just to try out a tutorial. And everyone who's been burned by a surprise bill rejoices.
Or try to automate the provisioning and shutdown of AWS accounts, where it's also like, I've built this tool. It's only a decade after the Google bought Quick Labs that they're sort of bringing this back, like a little behind on this one.
Again, this is an agentically developed feature, I'm sure.
For sure. Yeah, this is one of those.
And it's nice though because they've really killed the builder community in the last few years with the layoffs they've been doing over there. So at least they can use some of that savings to give you these free sandboxes.
Yeah.
I'm so curious if they're giving you a full AWS account or if how they're doing it, because I had a limit for a long time about like account IDs and things like that. So
yeah, I don't think they are. I think that's exactly why they've gone this direction, is so they can avoid those pitfalls of their legacy platform, like with the account ID limitation and the payment stuff they have on the back end. Because clearly as organizations, they've struggled to sort of put that in. And so like it's gotten a little better for non-sandbox accounts. But when you think about trying to open that up to public for very temporary sort of workloads, like it was never going to scale to that. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, at one point there was a rumor they were going to like extend the number of characters and
break the internet.
Like more account
nothing
IDs,
would be able to authenticate with anything ever again. It'd be funny.
Yeah. Hey, they changed EC2 instance IDs from like 7 to 13 years ago. Maybe they could have pulled it off.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, with change, I'm sure it's possible.
Now they have an AI who help them do it. I'm sure they'll go fine.
Well, it's everyone else that's the problem, right? Like it's everyone
everyone who's been integrating with them for the last 20 some odd years.
Right, that has grep, this point colon this point colon this point.
Input sanitation, ID must look
9.
like this.
Was it 9 characters, 9 digits? I think for the account ID, like same thing over and over again.
Exactly. OAuth support has now come to the AWS MCP server, letting AI agents authenticate using AWS sign-in instead of requiring separate authentication software or credential management layers. Existing IAM permissions, identities, and governance controls carry over automatically, so this is an additive security layer rather than a replacement for current access management setups. Both interactive browser-based and headless authorization flows are supported, covering use cases from developer testing to automated agent deployments in production pipelines. New administrative controls include OAuth-specific IAM condition keys, token introspection and revocation APIs, dynamic client registration, and CloudTrail audit logging for tracking agent access. And really the big question they didn't answer in this article is, when are you turning off the old way? Because I will need to do some updates.
I mean, the old way is just giving it API keys, I assume?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Or you'll use, it uses the standard like AWS CLI authentication layer, where you can give it a profile and it'll pick up if you single sign on. That's how I do it. But it would be nice to be able to have it actually handle doing the OAuth first versus you have to do it kind of out of band when you're doing with the MCP, and then come back in and say retry now that I've authenticated. Just dumb.
Yeah, that's sort of that flow. I think is what they're trying to avoid, which is good.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this is becoming the standard for access. So I'm glad to see Amazon sort of falling in line with that, and everyone's gonna struggle.
When is the MCP edict coming down that every MCP has to be OAuth, which I actually am starting to hate a lot, because every time I log into Cloud Code, it's like, you have 6 MCPs you need to go log into today, and I'm like, oh, son of a bitch.
Well, so that is, we're gonna suffer that through we get true agentic identities.
Correct.
And how we manage that, right? Like, and so right now we're just proxying user permissions and user identity.
But it's definitely making me like move more things to Google Enterprise app logins as fast as I can, which then you're into the problem of like, well, this is my personal project, and to get that I have to have the enterprise version of this thing, and I don't want to pay for that. So it's the have and have nots of that world right now, which I hope some of this breaks down some of these dumb licensing models where things like single sign-on are kept behind very expensive paywalls.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, everyone's struggling with this, right? So you're seeing stuff sort of coalesce, which I think is good, because it's hard to understand as it is. So, I do like the OAuth thing, but yeah, you're right. It's one of those things where it can be a challenge to authenticate to all the different MCP servers, but it's also, we have to have something. Otherwise, everyone's just running local MCP for everything and using the credentials on that side. So, agreed.
I mean, every security person I've talked to, including you, Ryan, is that we can't keep going down the API key route on these things, and it's been kind of a long-term comment. I'm surprised it's honestly taken this long to get this point where everyone's like, okay, we're finally moving to this route. But, like you guys said, moving over authentication.
I think AI has helped force it too. Because I think, the fact that Amazon's, even their command line tools, relied on profiles, and static credential files for a long time. And then they finally added this. And now with Agentic, you're like, yeah, that whole old model, that's got to go away. Like, I wouldn't be shocked to see Amazon start deprecating the legacy access key model at some point.
And I could we could do a whole show about my feelings about agentic identity, and the problems with that aren't really agent identity issues. Like, their AI has increased the scale and has definitely changed how we do that. But all these access patterns are true with humans too, right? Like, we've needed better access and authorization policies for human actions for a long time. And this is just forcing the issue because of scale, which is good.
Well, AWS Labs has released Loom, an open source enterprise grade platform for building and deploying AI agents using Strands, Agent SDK, and Amazon Bedrock Agent Core runtime, addressing the gap between raw agentic building blocks and production ready governance frameworks. Loom tackles 7 specific enterprise pain points, including automated resource tagging, role and attributes-based access control, identity propagation through delegated agent chains using RFC 8693 token exchanges, and human-in-the-loop approval before sensitive actions are taken. The platform offers both low-code deployment with a pre-written customizable Strands agent and no-code deployment via Agent Core's managed harness, letting platform teams scan code once and reuse it across deployments rather than generating and validating new code each time. Loom integrates with AWS Agent Registry, currently in public preview, for agent and tool discovery, complying with the agent-to-agent card spec and MCP tool schema spec, which helps organizations manage sprawl as agent, tool, and skill counts grow. This is a free open source project available to you at the GitHub link in the article, positioned as a reference implementation rather than a managed AWS service. So this is when Amazon gives you the sort of nice thing, but batteries aren't included.
Yeah, why would they do that? Because this is like all these problems that this is solving are something that I haven't had to solve because of use of Vertex AI and GCP. And so these are really hard problems to do when you're developing an agentic application, and you just have to build it from greenfield, from the ground up every single time with no coordination across a business unless you're using something like this. So it kind of bothers me that they're not integrating this directly into Bedrock Agent, whatever it is.
I think they will. I think this is them.
Yeah.
You think so? This feels like an admission of defeat that it won't come.
This is a Trojan horse. So they make this Loom thing. They promise all these things. They make it open source. They get people to adopt it, and then they make a service out of it. But now they now set the standard how all cloud providers will be looked at to do this because they open sourced it and a bunch of people adopted it. So that's what they're trying to do.
But they're the last.
Yeah.
Azure has this. GCP has.
Amazon doesn't acknowledge that they're last at anything.
Amazon doesn't acknowledge the other cloud providers.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I don't think they're gonna get this as an adopted standard, but I think this basically follows what everyone else is doing. So fine. Yeah,
but I do suspect it'll get embedded into a managed service. We'll probably see it reinvent. So
it should just be in Bedrock.
Make a note of it for your predictions. It'll be a thing.
Oh yeah, I do. Good call.
That Google Doc that we always say we're going to start setting up. Yeah, you should really set that up.
Instead of panicking in the last minute and then just
I have that doc. It exists for me. I just don't share it with you guys
because then we'd steal all your stuff, which we absolutely would.
Exactly, 100%.
Because you actually prepare and pre-think about these things.
One of us has executive function.
All right. Well, happy birthday, SQS. It's officially 20 years old as of yesterday. We recorded on Tuesday, Monday, the 13th of July. It turned 20. One of AWS's first 3 services alongside EC2 and S3, and the core function of decoupling producers from consumers remains unchanged 20 years later. They, of course, gave us a bunch of stats to let you know how much this service continues to get used, and it's quite impressive. First in, first out high throughput mode scaled substantially over the years, from 3,000 TPS at launch in 2021 to 70,000 TPS per API action in select regions by late 2023, addressing customers who demanding ordered messaging workloads. Security defaults improved with SSE-SQS encryption, becoming the default for all new queues in October 2022, removing the need for customers to manually configure encryption or manage keys. That took way too long, by the way. Payload size increased from 256 kilobytes to 1 megabyte in August 2025 for both standard and FIFO queues, reducing the need for customers to offload larger messages to S3, with corresponding updates to Lambda event source mappings. Fair queues, introduced in July 2025, address the noisy neighbor problem in multi-tenant standard queues by using message group IDs to prevent one tenant from delaying delivery for all other tenants. Thank you. And SQS has extended into AI workloads. Of course it has. With customers using queues to buffer LM requests, manage inference throughput, and coordinate communication between autonomous AI agents as detailed in AWS asynchronous AI agents architecture using Amazon Bedrock. Light paper.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I mean, I love SQS. It's one of those, foundational services that when in Amazon I use in every application, seemingly that I design, just because it's so easy to sort of build, either a state machine off of Lambda or some containerized event-based coordination across multiple components. It's great. I love this.
I definitely, anytime I see the agent go like, we could use a Kafka queue. I'm like, how about an SQS queue? And it's like, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Please stop recommending Kafka because that's annoying. Yeah.
It's cheap, it's reliable, it works, and I feel like it's the thing that really taught people to decouple their infrastructure.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I will say on Google, PubSub is also quite good for this.
It
as
is,
well.
yeah.
But
I was very happy.
between those two, those are the ones that I would always recommend people look at, is either PubSub, Hubbub, or SQS. Does Azure have like an equivalent, Matt?
They have a couple. They have a RabbitMQ equivalent one, Service
No,
Bus.
you lost me at RabbitMQ. Sorry.
Yeah, never mind. Moving on.
So they have their own, but it also is RabbitMQ compatible.
So they have RabbitMQ.
They have Service Bus. I think they added the other one later on. I think actually. So they did it, unlike Amazon that built Amazon MQ at one point in the future.
Yeah,
I think that still exists, or do they deprecate?
Yeah, it still exists.
Yeah,
I know companies that still use it.
You also have Kinesis, but I do feel like Kinesis has kind of lost a lot of, especially once SQS went to 1 megabit files. I do feel like Kinesis has lost a lot of love in the community these last. Everyone just goes to Kafka now. I don't know.
Well, I mean, think about Kinesis Firehose, and it's a different use case. Like when
it's a different use case altogether.
So it's like I
think
Kinesis
is like 4 things in one.
Yeah, it's a lot of things.
This is just one side of Kinesis. Yeah.
But I do wonder if this is one of those areas where if Amazon had made Kinesis run on other clouds, that it would be more popular, like Kafka, and then solve some of their multi-cloud problems. Because that's one of the biggest reasons why people end up on Kafka now is multi-cloud.
Sure, but I mean that's also it's not because they're running a managed service themselves, right? With managing the entire sort of producer consumer, flow. Whereas Kinesis is a managed service. I don't know. Like you can use that multi-cloud.
I can get managed Kafka from Amazon now. So
sure.
Just, but then there's also Confluent Cloud, of course, who's multi-cloud. You've got, and I think, doesn't Google have a Kafka service too?
Yeah, but from my GCP app, I can also just send everything to Kinesis and read from
Yeah, you can do that too.
So, I mean,
but then you have egress fees and everything else you have to deal with, and then you have to certify your cloud in multiple ways.
And you know how people in engineering feel about latency. They're going to tell you that latency is a problem, even though it's not, because that's why it's a queue.
Especially your event-driven, your event-driven decoupled queue. Yeah, latency.
Yeah. Latency is a problem. Is it? It's not.
Yeah. You and I have actually had that conversation with the dev team. I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
When did ECS go into multi-cloud? Because they tried to push ECS to really be a Kubernetes competitor.
ECS anywhere.
I know, but like, was that at the point when Kubernetes had kind of already won the battle? And that was
Kubernetes already taken over by the time they got to ECS. Anyway.
By that time, it was way late.
I was trying to replace it in the timeline because ECS, I still think is a great service that is completely underutilized.
I use it for every one of my Amazon projects is ECS.
Yeah, I use it too.
And Fargate.
Yeah. But I think the three of us all do.
Yeah. ECS Anywhere came out in May of 2021. It was definitely after Kubernetes had taken over the world.
Already won the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I actively avoid Kubernetes, basic, pod app structure because I don't like it and it's hard and everything's YAML files in a giant heap. And I hate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but AI makes it easier. That's what we were talking about. Was it last week? Where you have like Home Assistant and everything else, where it just takes it over.
It is making it bearable. So I am forced to use it in a couple of different areas, and I will tell you, AI is making it bearable because I just like go fix it, and then it will go figure out the 11 million YAML files and where the inheritance all comes from, and just does it, which I don't have to do anymore, which is awesome.
Oh, if you could tell what people's tokens are being used for, I bet 90% of all DevOps user tokens are managing Kubernetes. I bet it's an astronomical number. Like every time I've talked to an AI ops company now who's like, oh, we build AI agents to help your ops team do more things. And it's like, okay, what's your use case? I'm going to show you a Kubernetes use case. I'm like, of course you are.
Yeah.
So weird.
So then the question is Gemini better than Claude or
no
GPT because they wrote Kubernetes?
I mean, because the piles of YAML are all public in GitHub. They're all using it.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
I was trying to circle it back to what we started at the start of the show.
They don't have anything interesting on the back end.
Just because Google made Kubernetes, they aren't that great at running it. So it's like, they're okay.
They're way better at me running it.
Oh yeah, no, I mean they're better than me as well.
Most platform teams, like it's just complex to run. Like you want GKE to do more for you for sure. Like you wish it did more, but that's just Kubernetes.
Yeah, when it barely does what EKS does, and you're like, you came out first and you built it and you wrote it, you would think you'd have more, but no, that's not the case. So AWS Security Hub now auto-discovers and catalogs AI assets across an organization using 3 methods. AWS config data for managed services like Bedrock and SageMaker. Enhanced Inspector of SBOM analysis for self-hosted models on EC2 and ECR covering OLAMA, VLM, Hugging Face, TGI. And GuardDuty DNS telemetry to spot calls to third-party AI APIs. The core problem this addresses is shadow AI. Oh, that dang shadow AI. Security teams often don't know what models, agents, or inference endpoints are running across their accounts, making it impossible to assess a risk or respond to threats tied to those workloads. Discovered assets are correlated with existing GuardDuty findings and other security stack signals, letting teams filter and prioritize by account, resource type, discovery method, or model identity to focus remediation on the highest risk AI workloads. The feature is bundled into Security Hub Essentials at no extra cost and requires no additional setup. Thanks, Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, let me be the first security engineer to go. A lot of the scare of AI and all these things, like we must visualize every AI application and know where we're doing things is a knee-jerk reaction to, we don't know how to secure this thing, and it's out, and everyone knows it's out, and everyone's using it in every which way, and we just don't know, right? And so I'm hoping that services like this make it a lot easier, and I do like the way that they're doing it because it's much more comprehensive than I see in other cloud providers in terms of detection. But having the ability to say, these are the AI workloads, we have this information being piped into our SIM, we can do the analysis if we ever need to do the analysis and do the forensic investigation if we have the data, so we can all calm down and not just try to block everything in a whack-a-mole kind of way. So I do think that this is hopefully going to make security and AI easier in the sense of just identifying it and making sure that you have the data.
I'm still stuck on shadow AI when Justin read it. Like shadow IT, shadow cloud providers, like
shadow SaaS. I learned, I think it was literally yesterday. It was the first time I'd heard shadow SaaS.
I mean, shadow SaaS is really shadow IT, isn't it?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Because basically shadow IT was basically, I can go sign up for blah SaaS service with my credit card, and then I'm using it for enterprise
shadow
things.
Shadow IT was originally like you brought your own computer, like BYOD and stuff like that.
Oh, that lived for about 5 seconds.
That was the separation that was in the thing I was reading too. It was just like the applications I'm running on my laptop is shadow IT. The services that I'm putting my own credit card into are shadow SaaS. It was just a distinction between those two things. It's the same thing.
I don't know who framed that and who did that, but
yeah,
I get it.
I mean, and it's just it's a.
But I definitely think shadow AI was probably the most rampant of all of them because, as ChatGPT got popular, people were using that stuff everywhere. And all these companies were like, don't use these tools with our data. Like,
oh, yeah. Yeah. Not only, like that. And then all the things like, let us optimize your inbox. Let us take all your photos and do a whole thing. And people were absolutely. Yeah.
Otter AI originally.
Yeah.
That was intense. I feel like when Otter AI first came out, everyone's like, oh, I have this meeting assistant that just take notes and it automatically emails everyone that was in the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was rough.
There's all kinds of fun stories, horror stories I've heard from companies and other CIO friends. And it's like, well, yeah, if you don't remember to stop recording, everyone gets all the recording data. That could go bad. Yeah, it's crazy. GuardDuty AI protection extends AWS threat detection to Bedrock and SageMaker, addressing a visibility gap as organizations deploy more AI workloads without dedicated security tooling. The service targets AI-specific threats, including cost harvesting attacks, excessive GPU and token consumption, anomalous model invocation patterns, and prompt injection attempts that ladder via integration with Bedrock guardrails. Detection relies on analyzing CloudTrail management and data events requiring no manual configuration or custom tooling, and can be enabled organization-wide through AWS Organizations for centralized management. Findings integrate directly with AWS Security Hub, giving security teams a consolidated view of AI assets alongside other cloud threat data, rather than a separate console to monitor.
Yeah, I always laugh that they have to separate. They have to always, in every single blog post, they have to explain the difference between Security Hub and GuardDuty because it's sort of like the same thing. But, it's just what Amazon does. They have GuardDuty for the detections, and they have config, and they have all these different things that feed into Security Hub as your SIM kind of, so it's sort of funny.
They never wanted to call it a SIM though. That's the part that was always annoying.
They really don't, and that's why. I think that's why the confusion is always there. So it's okay.
I feel like there's a reason they don't want to call it a SIM. Like they don't want the responsibility, the reliability, or something for it.
Because they don't want security money, which is
They don't want to cut their partners. That's the problem.
That's
the reality is that Amazon's always been super partner focused on security. Not the other areas. They'll burn every other partner, but a security partner, they're like, no, we're good to you. We won't take your business away, so we won't call it a SIM, even though it is 100% a SIM.
Yeah.
So
one of the ones that they added by default, the excessive GPU and token consumption, reminds me of the initial attack on the cloud, which was a money-based attack to essentially bankrupt your
crypto mining. Yeah.
No, it wasn't that. It was if you didn't have correct auto scaling policies in place, was to scale, like, cost the person you're attacking by making too many like connections to their web servers, having them scale up too much and then crashing them that way. On that, it was in the original AWS security beta exam. It's called like, I'll find the verbiage, but it was like a very specific question that I looked up afterwards. I was like, I didn't know that there was a name for it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a DDoS attack where a lot of DDoS attacks.
The whole point was to make them bankrupt, though.
Yeah, that was an early attack vector.
Well, denial of service is denial of service, but yeah,
but it was also denial of service, but also like, let's have your volume be so high because you auto scaled or had all these transactions you're paying by Amazon for. That was one of the plays. That one went away after Amazon basically said, we won't, if you're being abused and you're using our Shield Advance or whatever, we won't charge
Shield
you.
Advance, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This would go the same way in my opinion too. Like, I don't know, like I'm starting to see this in a lot of security tools where the sort of FinOps play with token usage is being rolled into the security side of things. And it's like, it's conveniently, easy to put there, but it's also sort of feels like now you've got security rules and detections based off of token usage. Like, I'm not sure that that's the right place for it, but get my soapbox.
Well, you at least are up and operational 24/7. Your FinOps person is the 9 to 5 finance person.
Sure. But do you really want to, like security analysts that's got a finding for abnormal token usage? And what are they, like they're going to go and investigate that and be like, is this valid usage? And going through all that, like, I don't know. Like, this is like having your security team address like a load spike in your application load balancer. Like, I think this is dumb.
I'm not disagreeing, but if I get to wake up Ryan in the middle of the night for something stupid, it's more fun for me.
I don't think most people feel that way. In fact, I think I've received a lot of critical feedback that I'm afraid to call him in the middle of the night. I think we're the direct words.
Yeah.
And I was like, good.
Matt likes to poke the bear. That's
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah. I think that's why we're friends.
Yeah, no one else is like, hey, you know what would be fun? Get Ryan on the call at 3 a.m. for the
Get
say
him
it's
mad.
not really security related. And then he has to lecture everyone on the call about why they're wrong. Yeah, that's great.
See, you can tell Ryan and I have never worked for the same company, so I just get to make fun of him all the time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
it's true.
All right, let's move on to Google Cloud. So Google Cloud is replacing their mandatory 2-year proctored exam recertification model with an option to use Google skill courses and skill badges instead, applying initially to cloud digital leaders, associate cloud engineer, professional cloud architect, and professional data engineering certifications. Completing required courses or skills badges certification is still active automatically extends it by 1 year, giving certification holders a flexible self-paced alternative to exam-based renewal. Skill badges are positioned as a faster path since they focus on hands-on labs tied to real-world tasks, while courses are aimed at those wanting deeper conceptual review of updated material. Google cites the Harvard Business Review data showing skill half-life has dropped from roughly 6 years to 2.5 years, framing this as a rationale for more frequent, lower-friction recertification. The change reflects a broader industry shift towards continuous practical validation of cloud skills rather than a one-time exam certification, which I love the concept of this, but does this make the certificates less valuable over time? Because now I don't know if you're like current on everything or you just took a couple skills classes and now you're current on stuff for 4 years ago, but then you've got 2 more years because you did, basket weaving for cloud.
I don't know if that's any different though. Like, the reality is that no one looks at certifications anymore as like identifying competency.
It's an HR checkbox.
And well, there is that. There's a lot of checkbox stuff for that.
Really what this helps is the partners who have to have X number of certified people on their staffs. And
no kidding.
The cost of getting them recertified every 2 years was a lot of money. So
well, and I honestly think this is a better outcome because I know, well, at least for me personally, because the way I learn stuff, the labs for using in those Google Skills courses, the more hands-on stuff where I'm doing stuff, that makes me learn it much better, much more practically than studying for like, the Amazon test like I did forever ago. Like, I don't think I used any of the information really that I studied for in that test. Like, it was all information I either already had because I was working in the cloud at the time, and then I had to learn about all these random services that I didn't really care or know about.
But that's the difference of being internal versus a consultant. As a consultant, you tend to deal with more broad spectrum services.
I understood.
Amazon, though, did release for the SysOps exam, because they helped beta it and to build it out at one point, was the go in the console and go do this thing. Which was interesting because I had actually logged in and made an S3 bucket like 3 years, and I'm sharing my screen with a bunch of people who are watching me do this for the first time. And it was like, but like, that is actually practical, but that was more for the SysOps exam, which I think they just dropped, if I remember, recently.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft did that with the Windows 2000 MCSE courses back in the day. They used to have a practical part where you'd have to go configure stuff using the UI, and it was always annoying to me because like they would count the number of clicks that you would do to go to different menus, and if the path was 5 clicks and you took 7 clicks, you get it wrong. You wouldn't get credit because they had no way. They couldn't have someone review what you were actually doing, so they had to automate it in some way. But like the problem with Windows 2000 in particular was that was the birthplace of the MSC, or the Microsoft admin console views, and they were terrible. And so I could never remember where the hell anything was until I poked around at least a menu 3 times. I'm like, oh yeah, that's where it is. Okay, I got it.
So Amazon doesn't care where it is; it cares about what the outcome is. So they have a bunch of testing and whatnot.
That's how these Google Cloud courses work too. When they test you at the end, it's testing an outcome. And so,
which is I think what Microsoft moved to as well, and even the MCSE. But I remember early days that was terrible.
Yeah.
So the SysOps exam is dead, and now they have the Cloud Ops Engineer Associate exam.
Nice. It's been a long time since I've been certified.
I know.
I wanted to do it for Google when I first started working on Google 5 years ago, and I just never could get the time to do it.
Yeah.
And then
I wanted to do it, and then I couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it went for me too.
Where it is. Still today.
It's worth it. It's worth it if you go to conferences because they normally have the quiet place for.
That was the only reason I did it for Amazon.
I get it through the executive lounge now. So
Justin cheats.
Yeah.
He just cheats over here.
Yeah. Justin took the super high road. I have to. Yeah. I'll probably still have to get certified so I can get a chair and some free coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or we just don't go to conferences, which is kind of more and more my preference. So we'll have a watch party at someone's house and we'll make you coffee. How's that?
Sweet. That would be.
You can even have it delivered.
Yeah. Cloud Run sandboxes are now in public preview, giving developers an isolated runtime to execute untrusted or AI-generated code without exposing host applications, data, or cloud credentials. Startup latency averages 500 milliseconds, with example in the announcement showing 1,000 sandboxes started, executed, and stopped. Security defaults are locked down. Sandboxes have no access to environment variables or the metadata server. Network egress is blocked by default unless explicitly enabled, and the file system is read-only with changes written to a temporary memory overlay as discarded after execution. Key use cases include LLM code interpreters for data analysis, headless browsers for web scraping and automation, and running user-submitted scripts or plugins on multi-tenant platforms. Enabling the feature requires adding a single flag during deployment via gcloud or YAML config, and sandboxes are invoked through a CLI binary using standard subprocess calls, which keeps developer workflow simple. Integration is built into the next version of Agent Development Kit by a Cloud Run Sandbox code executor, and support has also been added to the Compute SDK, a vendor-agnostic sandbox SDK for use inside or outside the Cloud Run service. Sandboxes run on the CPU and memory already allocated to the Cloud Run instance, so there is no additional charge or premium for the feature compared to dedicated sandbox hosting platforms that bill for on-demand VMs.
This is crazy cool. I love this. Like, because this is, if you have an agent execution inside your Cloud Run container, it has access to for everything.
Everything.
And it's so easy to do prompt injection. And if you don't catch that in your application, the user on the other side of that application using the app could just get all of that system information directly. And so this is a way to sort of secure against that, which is fantastic. It is sort of, I wonder what it is under the hood since it's using the same CPU and memory. It's like, is this Docker and Docker like kind of execution? And it might be, because I think Cloud Run is Knative under the hood. And so it's definitely containers being executed. So it's kind of cool. This would be neat. I'll probably use this almost immediately.
That's great. And then another one I'm not sure about. Google has open sourced something they're calling K8S or Kubernetes AI Bomb. an unprivileged Kubernetes controller for Google Kubernetes engine that automatically detects running AI runtimes like VLM, Triton, TGI, Olana, LangChain, etc., and generates standardized Cyclone DX 1.6 ML bombs without requiring sidecars, eBPF modules, or pod spec changes. It's available in a GitHub repo from the Google Cloud Platform, Kubernetes AI Bomb. The tool addresses shadow AI detection by monitoring live cluster state, K-serve resources, deployments, and stateful sets and jobs, rather than scanning artifacts at build time, catching workloads that were never formally registered with the security team. A 3-tier confidence model classifying as declared, inferred, or unresolved, giving auditors a way to distinguish human intent from automated inference. Output is deterministic with identical cluster state produced by identical bombs, supporting GitOps, diffing, and drift alerts, and cloud storage sync rights using does not exist preconditions to make bomb records immutable once created, targeting audit-grade evidence requirements. This maps directly to compliance frameworks, including the EU AI Act Articles 12 and 50, NIST AI RMF, and ISO IEC 42001, positioning as a governance tool for CISOs and compliance teams working with GKE-hosted AI workloads rather than replacement for existing posture management tools.
I look forward to having to roll this out immediately in response to, addressing shadow AI.
I mean, I think it's a good thing, with especially where everything with like the U.S. government and S-bombs became a thing. It's a good belt and suspenders to see what's actually running, because otherwise you're relying, on your dev teams to in order to tell you, which, I think the three of us trust our dev teams as much as we can throw them at most days. So, it's a good way to kind of give that belt suspenders to see what's actually running out there and figure out if it's useful, if it's not, if it's what we thought it was, or if it's a third party that added in this AI LLM that you don't even know that's running there.
You mean you don't think I'd catch this with my, static code analysis?
Not if it's loading something at runtime into
No, exactly. No, that's No, I'm sorry, I was being sarcastic.
Oh, sorry.
People can't see my face, and yeah, you are.
I normally pick up your sarcasm in your voice, but
this one, no, this is fantastic. It is one of those things. Loading things at runtime is exactly where you see this, especially, like in containerized workloads. So this is something that is definitely needed, and it's hard to get the visibility today.
Yeah, I'm glad I open sourced that one too. So now I can compete with Loom. Then we can see which one wins.
Well, it's not really a competition.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Like, they don't do the same thing. Like, this is much more, like feeding data out.
I mean,
having
Loom also had a bomb thing, but yeah, you're right. It's not the same thing. But I do like the idea.
Sorry, I missed that.
Different purposes. So you are correct. Well, in the most confusing show title topic of the week with Azure, Azure Monitor Observability Agent, now generally available, goes autonomous in preview. Come on, Microsoft. We got to work on this.
Wow.
Yeah. The AI bot wrote the subject.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had to look at this a couple times if you're like, because it's great. So the observability agent is now generally available, and then they're adding autonomous AI capabilities to it in preview, allowing the agent to take independent action based on monitoring data rather than just surfacing the insight. The autonomous mode builds on existing Copilot integration with Azure Monitor, positioning it as Microsoft's broader push to embed AI-driven automation across its observability and IT operations tooling. Target use cases center on reducing manual intervention for common operational tasks such as anomaly detection and remediation workflows, which could appeal to teams managing large or complex Azure environments.
Every Azure environment is complex because nothing makes sense in Azure.
What do you mean? You don't like the storage accounts that attach to multiple other accounts that touch back to a billing entity contract ID that makes no sense to anybody in ops? You don't like that?
That's loaded into a container, which has a completely different access model than the rest of everything. Yes. No, I mean...
Well, your storage account has containers in it. Not to be confused with, your AKS cluster that has containers.
Which has containers in it too.
Right.
And then all put behind a front door. Even though can't be the front door because it's the storage gateway, but whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
But your front door can connect to your container, but only securely if you're on premium.
Okay, this is hurting my brain.
Yeah. No, this whole story, including the who's on first sort of pre-read conversation that we had. This is taking way too much brain power for this cloud pod.
I feel like Azure's doing what Amazon did, which was like, we have all these agents. Okay, we're going to build one agent. Okay, we're building new agents. and they're slowly going to come back into one agent in the future. Like it just feels like the ebb and flow of all these providers at this point.
Yeah, they all think they're doing something special and unique, and then they all get it in the real world, and other customers are like, "Yeah, why isn't this in that tool over there?" And they're like, "Oh, you want those together?" That's how you.
Yeah.
Azure Files NFS targets Linux workloads with new performance features, including InConnect for multiple parallel TCP connections, zonal placement to collocate shares with GPU VMs, and a provisioned V2 billing model that lets teams size IOPS and throughput independently. And if the fact that it was tied to GPU VMs didn't tell you this is for AI, you're not paying attention. Push the cloud pod. For AI inferencing, storing model weights on shared file share instead of embedding them in container images lets multiple replicas mount and read the same data simultaneously, cutting cold start times and reducing GPU idle time. And when you're building a model or doing inference, model access is king.
Mm-hmm. And load is crazy, right? For accessing those things, so it's can stress out your storage layer real fast. So it's cool, and I like this is a separate distributed file system that's outside of your containerized workloads. It's not to be used with databases, so it's cool.
I really, really had hoped that we were on this trajectory that would end up with there, being no CIFS or NFS file shares ever again. Like we're necessary.
It's all coming back.
It's all coming back with like such a vengeance. It's so crazy because like we were so close to everything's gonna be object storage, and now AI screwed it all up for everybody.
The only good news is that it's also been much improved over the early days of like fuse drivers and stuff. Where so like I do like that part of it, but
could you imagine doing this type of model training that they're doing with CIF shares now 10 years ago?
Oh God, no. Or even NFS 3.0 would not have been able to handle it.
It wouldn't be able to handle this either. Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, it would have been get files from S3, and at that point, you still had to do the randomization of the prefix in front of it to not have hot.
Well, and you would.
What do they call it?
It's really the multi-write problem that really kills object storage for this, because the fact that they all need to write to the same data source, they all have the same knowledge at the same time, is just crazy. So it's all those. That's where all that high performance compute clusters that everyone was building for so long required something to be done. All right, Microsoft Tokenomics Guidance is a new white paper they released on how to frame tokens as the core cost unit for AI applications, and app design choices of directly affect consumption rates and spend. Key optimization techniques includes compressing conversation history rather than resending full context on each call, and setting caps on token usage to control costs. This matters for Azure OpenAI service customers building conversational AI apps, since inefficient prompt and context management can significantly inflate token consumption and billing. The guidance applies broadly to teams using Azure AI Foundry or Azure OpenAI services. So also a big thing that impacts your token costs: caching. Make sure you're caching your data if you're using tokens, and also how you structure your system prompts is important, because only thing cacheable has to be over 2048 bytes typically for like an Anthropic model, and so you want to make sure that the things that you're going to cache fit inside that first 2048. That way, that you guarantee that's always in cache versus the rest of the prompt, which may not be.
Caching is for AI workloads is hard. I've been playing around with that a little bit now that I'm getting more into building AI into an application rather than just sort of yelling at it all day. But it's pretty fascinating to try to figure out how to do that efficiently and how to think through it. I don't think I'm quite there yet. But I think that the tokenomics and the standard sort of metric for computer utilization and cost, I think it's funny that it'll probably I think it's already sliding towards tokens rather than sort of like TPU, or what were those other sort of compute units that sort of came out with machine learning.
Every Amazon service had its own compute unit, and we went from like, okay, it's this much cores and this much memory for this amount of dollars, and even if it was like Lambda, which was like 0.00007 cents per vCore, to now it's just we went to sort of abstract concepts of like, here's your D-SQL whatever usage, and now I feel like with tokens you're like, we have a general idea of what this may or may not cost if we don't have a dumb person writing random things into it. Like, it's just such a abstract concept, tokens, that I understand why it's there, but it's also like, from a FinOps perspective, from a management perspective, how do you know what you're going to use? Even the same prompt can be such a wide variety of responses and costs.
Yeah.
Well, and even, like how you I was looking at an example as earlier for somebody I was explaining to them, like cat is 1 token, understanding is 3 tokens, but backlog is only 2 tokens. And they're like, what? I'm like, I know, it makes no sense. Yeah. And it just, that's the way. And then how do you calculate output tokens? Like tokenomics is going to be a art and science for quite a while, I think, until people really figure it out.
I think it's more of an art than a science.
Which I think, I think FinOps was an art initially as well, and so I think that's we'll see it evolve, but it's an art now. It'll eventually be a science. That's my guess. All right, well, moving on to emerging clouds with Cloudflare this week. Smart tiered cache previously couldn't optimize caching for origins behind Anycast or regional unicast IPs, which is common for AWS, GCP, Azure, and Oracle cloud deployments, since a single origin IP can appear equidistant from many Cloudflare data centers, running a selection of one best upper tier. The fix lets customers manually supply a cloud region hint, such as AWS US East 1, so Cloudflare can map the origin to its actual region and assign an optimal primary and fallback upper tier, rather than falling back to a less efficient multi-tier topology. Cloudflare detects Anycast origins using a speed of light constraint on probe latencies from multiple checkpoint data centers. If 2 measured latencies are physically faster than fiber, would allow between locations, the origin is flagged as Anycast. Without this fix, hairpin routing could occur. For example, an origin in Singapore might get assigned an upper tier in Chicago, adding hundreds of milliseconds of latency for unnecessary cross-continental round trips. This is configurable via the dashboard, API, or Terraform code, and available for AWS, GCP, Azure, and Oracle Cloud today.
I mean, this is neat. Like if you're running a globally distributed app, this has always been sort of an issue, like trying to manage your multi-regions and your availability and blue-green deployments even.
Well, we used to do all kinds of tricks, right? Like with DNS, and we're like, okay, well, we'll, based on your latency to the thing, we'll give you this different IP address that's closer to you, but then that doesn't work. And then, Amazon came out with Anycast, and then you put everything behind Anycast. So you didn't have to think about it. And then that fucked Cloudflare. Like it's been a journey.
Yeah. So I do like that, and I see why they're having to release this. It's one of those things, but it's cool. Yeah. I like it.
I'm sure it's a big deal too for people who are, don't care about data sovereignty for AI usage, but if you are running GPUs across the globe and these GPUs are more available to you, but then you're routing people the wrong way around the globe for latency reasons, that's a bad scenario.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So being able to give hints is a much better solution to that problem. And then the other announcement from Cloud for this week is the launch of Precursor, a client-side session-based bot detection system that continuously monitors behavioral signals like mouse movement, keyboard rhythm, and focus changes through an entire user session, not just at login or checkout. This extends existing protections from Turnstile, which runs about 3 billion times a daily, but only covers specific checkpoints, closing a visibility gap for the rest of the user journey where bots can otherwise blend in. The technical approach relies on physical constraints that are difficult for bots to fake consistently over time, such as wrist pivot arcs, cognitive load delays, and hand tremor frequency, versus the linear paths and mathematically precise timing typical of automation scripts. Session scoping is a key design choice, with favorable data persist across the session so bots can reset their signature by refreshing the page or retriggering a challenge, raising the operational costs and complexity for bot developers who must now simulate an entire session rather than a single interaction. Privacy is addressed by collecting only aggregate behavioral patterns, and Precursor is available now as an enterprise bot management feature. And if you are a CloudPod host, someone we cover, and you add this to your thing and you break our bot, I'm just going to stop covering you.
Justin will be upset.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering if over time you're essentially going to be able to get fingerprints based on how people use their mouse and like how your hand moves and things like that. Like, are you going to be able to identify it down to the person?
I mean, isn't it like there's only basically marketers only require 3 distinct data points from you to know exactly who you are?
Yeah.
And then then apparently you can also use Wi-Fi signals to map every living person in your house, which is a fun thing that happened not too long ago. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to abuse these things.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is, largely aimed at people who are trying to get around sort of, adding the proper like AI agent tags, right? So if it's legitimate traffic, it won't be subject to this. This is for illegitimate traffic and catching that.
I'm legitimate traffic. I'm willing to maybe pay some Bitcoins or whatever with the
whatever
pay for whatever thing just to make my
whatever
life
the
easier.
model, whatever it turns into.
As long as you're trying to charge me $9.99 a month for your website, like I'll pay you a couple pennies for your article, sure. But I'm just not going to cover you on the cloud pod if I can't get to your site. That's
Right.
become my rule of thumb pretty quickly.
Yeah. No, I mean,
If we can't get to it, you don't get it.
Yeah. We're not going to talk about your cool new feature. Sorry.
We're incredibly lazy. We're not going to put that effort in.
Exactly. Well, gentlemen, we made it to another end of the cloud pod.
Woohoo!
Yay. It wasn't too much AI stories, only 48%
Only
of it.
all of them.
Only everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, stick around if you're interested for the after show. We'll be talking about the riveting world of HTTP GET requests, and we'll see you next week here on the show.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Another week of cloud news wrapped up. Bolt will collect the news. Justin will get the notes. Jonathan will write some code. Ryan will watch the perimeter. And Matt will reluctantly watch Azure. Till next week for AI, Amazon, Google Cloud, and Azure. And hey, maybe even Oracle, who knows? Check out the cloudpod.net for our newsletter. Join our Slack, message us on socials, or leave a review.
All right. So we've been taking this article for a couple of weeks in the after show just because we've had a lot of news to cover recently. But basically, we're going to talk about RFC 1008, the HTTP query method. It's going to be riveting, I'm sure. But basically, the IETF, or the International Engineering Standards Board, has finalized RFC 10008, formally standardizing the HTTP query method after years of discussion dating back all the way to the dark ages of 2019. This was an HTTP workshop proposal giving developers a new option beyond GET and POST for read-only operations. Query solves a practical problem, sending complex search or filter parameters that are too large or awkward for a URL, but still keeping the safe and idempotent properties that GET offers, meaning requests can be cached, retried, or automated without side effects. Unlike POST, which is often misused for queries because it can carry larger payloads, Query explicitly signals to clients, caches, and intermediaries that the request will not change server state, enabling proper caching behavior and automatic retry logics. The spec includes the new accept query response header, letting servers advertise which query formats they support, such as SQL, JSON Path, or XSLT, giving clients a standard way to discover capabilities before sending a request. Adoption will require work on both the server and client side, yes it will, including handling CORS pre-flight requests since query is not in the CORS safe list, and cloud API designers will need to decide whether to expose query alongside or instead of existing search endpoints built on POST. So yeah, if you've ever had to deal with really super complex GET patterns to try to, filter a catalog or provide different viewpoints to your web end front end, you find very quickly that there are size limits. It's hard to do certain expressions, and request URIs get blocked by all kinds of fun things like WAF detection and other things that you end up troubleshooting on the security side quite a bit. So having a query method in addition to POST and GET, I think, is a great addition. Yeah,
I really hope that Atlassian adopts this quickly. If you've ever tried to do large queries against, Jira API,
it's not fun.
It's painful, very painful.
Mm-hmm.
And not being able to really formulate, directly in a payload, which I think this is really cool. And it's such a mess trying to use it otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's just, something that grew, from the original spec, and it's nice to see them kind of put a replacement in and make it be safe. This really feels like more of a security feature than anything else, because you're able to say this is not actually making changes versus you technically were doing a post before to get the larger body, but you really weren't making a change. So it just opens you up for a lot of other potential issues.
Well, and if that post you were able to somehow, one of the common attack vectors in this was an OWASP is credential stuffing inside of the URL parameters, or even doing a buffer overload attack somehow into those areas. And so by doing, and that was the risk of the post for sure. And now it's a query thing, you can definitely make sure that's a more controlled input method. So I appreciate it. I don't know why it took since 2019. This has been a problem for a while, but
I think 2019 was just the last one, right? Last update,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, 2020 happened after that, I guess, and then
and then everything after that's just a blur. Yeah.
And now AI is taking over.
I think I did see that the web browsers, Chromium and the other ones were starting to add this into their web browsers already in beta and early preview builds. So it means that people are starting to take this seriously and start to build it out pretty quickly.
Did you guys know there are 30 different method names in the HTTP spec? 30?
No.
There's some what? There's some weird ones in here that I have never heard of.
Wait, really? List them off. Let's go.
On checkout, updated direct reference, like as a method name. Like
I've heard on checkout before.
Yeah, I've heard that one too.
I don't know what it does, but I've heard of it.
MK activity. No
Not
idea.
MK Ultra.
Yeah. MK workspace. Like what?
This is like HTTP codes. There's so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the on checkout I'm familiar with because it basically refers to an event-driven callback or method executed when a user proceeds to pay. And so I dealt with this integrating the Stripe SDK into like the Backyard Barbecue website for this reason, because you have to basically, you want to, on the checkout event, you want to get back from Stripe that this is an approved payment or it's a not approved payment. And so that's what it typically gets used for. But yeah,
and that's part of the HTTP spec. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Not just part of like the Stripe API.
No, it's they're not the only one who does it. Checkout.com does it. There's a bunch of others that have
it. I mean, it sounds like it's an attempt to generalize it, right?
Yeah, well, there was, and this is because I didn't get into e-commerce the last couple of years now, but payment intents are what Stripe basically modernized in the payment thing, and so intents require this on checkout capability. And the way they did it before was not with an intent-based model; it was more of like a webhook heavy solution that went back and forth basically in the session state. And that was more security risky. That's how they had a lot of problems in the day. So Stripe kind of invented that concept. And I think that's where this came from that as well. Yeah. Lots of fun things in e-commerce.
Yeah. I'm still struggling to understand what the make functions, make activity, make workspace, like reading the spec is, I'd have to read it a lot more carefully, but it's apparently you can do a lot more stuff for, if your application supports it, of course, but which I don't really understand how I'd use them, but sure, maybe it's more useful in like heavy UI apps or something. Like I'm not trying to think through.
I didn't really know there was a straight version control also.
Right? Yeah.
This method is used to create a new version control resource. It allows the client to initiate version control for a resource, enabling tracking of changes in versions over time. It's pretty cool idea.
Yeah.
Just never thought about it.
And, never thought about that. And there's order patch too, which is sort of a similar sort of thing too. So it's sort of,
So a start workspace HTTP request. Like what I'm finding when I Google that one is it's like talking about cloud workspaces.
Right. That's that's where my brain immediately went as well.
That can't be right. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think it's much more like the Java execution or at the DOM level.
It's something there.
But it just shows how complex these things are that like you don't even think about some of these things.
Well, I mean, like HTTP is basically bash or sed or awk for the internet.
Yeah.
It's basically
is.
It's a really a Swiss Army thing that's used everywhere for all kinds of craziness. And then you get into like WebSockets and HTTP2 and HTTP3 and all that stuff, and like it's super complicated really quickly because a lot of stuff's been kind of bolted on top of it. For right and wrong reasons, and sometimes.
Yeah, I remember having to learn all that stuff for HTTP, like learning what HTTP3 is. You're just like, oh my god.
When you enabled it, what it's gonna break, what it's not gonna break, how do you test for it? Because I think Azure still has HTTP2 disabled by default on load balancers.
Yes.
Or maybe it's HTTP3 by default. One of the two. I think it's 2.
I hope so.
2 is on by default now. It used to not be, but I think it is now.
I think it was still off on Azure, just on the application gateway.
Yeah, so the last time they met was 2019 for this HTTP method working group. That's nuts. I mean,
that's great. I mean, I love that there's still like a cabal that runs the internet for all these things.
Well, anytime you get into IETF, you're just like, really, the Internet Engineering Task Force specifies these things. Like, okay, there you go.
I always imagine it like in The Simpsons, there's the Stonecutters, which is like a Mason sort of parody. Like they get together, they have little outfits and headshakes, they sing songs. Like I love it. Like this is what I imagine. It's probably really boring, but in my head it's much more cool. Same with like DNS and all those things, like the cabals that run all these things. It's great.
No, I see a working group for HTTP working group it was the interim meeting agenda, October 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's probably not the main guys, right? That's just like the B team.
That's a small working group, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the working.
Who knows?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I know I've been on some of the the news feed, news groups these people are on, and they send emails back and forth, and they're arguing like the most minute details of like an implementation of these things. You're like, these are not my people.
Yeah.
I want them to be my people because it sounds like they're really smart people, but
it's more like I want to be smart enough to be that pedantic.
Yeah,
like I'm pedantic but not that smart, right? So I'm just a
exactly.
pain in the ass.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I have to run, but it's good catching up with you as well. And I don't think I can say much more about RFCs today.
No, that's the end.
I'm good.
Like I wasn't going another layer down for sure.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah, it's not good as DOM execution models.
No. Oh man,
skip that.
I've never known that. I don't want to know that.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And good night.